Hello, everyone, and welcome to Undercurrents. Normally, I like to speak to ordinary South Africans, but today I have someone fairly extraordinary. He's the longest member of parliament in our history, I believe our history, I could be wrong, and he's currently the leader of the Freedom Front Plus. Dr. Corne Mulder, what a pleasure to host you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Roman. It's a pleasure for me. It's a privilege to participate on your show, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate this.
The pleasure is indeed all mine, sir. So I want to go on two broad themes as we discussed, mostly around the viability of Freedom Front Plus in the GNU itself as it currently stands, and also the fracturing of the hard left in South African politics, and what are your tea leaves saying about the future of South Africa based on that. So without any further ado, let's just go to the GNU at the moment. You're currently in it. Your previous leader is now the Minister of, like, it used to be called prisons, but now it's something else. I can't remember. What
Correctional.
benefit are you? Correctional services. Yes, sorry. Yes,
Yes. Yes.
I forgot about the PR term for these things. What is the benefit to the Freedom Front Plus in remaining in the GNU at this time?
If I may give a little bit of background, I always say that for the last 30 years, until the 2024 election, we basically had an abnormal democracy, which was normal. It was not normal. And the reason I say that is because if you look at our electoral system, it's strictly proportional representation. Now, if you look internationally all around the world, you won't find easily at all that one party gets a clear majority on their own in a proportional system. You'll go and look at different examples. A party will get 30%, they will claim they won the election, and they will then be asked to form a coalition. But we've had an abnormal situation for 30 years where the ANC still retained a majority despite the electoral system. And I was always optimistic, and we've always said there will come a day and a time when we will move into normal politics where we will not have a majority party. Luckily, that came in 2024. And I've been a great proponent in terms of get to that point. So I was rather excited when the election results came and the ANC couldn't govern on their own, and it gave us the opportunity to form a coalition or a government of national unity, and that was positive. What happened since then is a different story altogether. How it was formed is a different story, and there are huge challenges in that respect. And some of that is to be expected. Our constitution was not written to accommodate really a coalition in various ways. For example, the Constitution requires that within 14 days after the election result, you must elect a president. Now, normally, if these kind of negotiations can go on for months before you get to the point where you've got an agreement and the parties agree to elect a president. The second thing that went wrong, as far as I'm concerned, was that the negotiations with the current government of national unity was a very exclusive process between only two parties, the ANC and the Democratic Alliance. They negotiated, they came to an agreement, and I think the Democratic Alliance preferred to have an exclusive arrangement with the ANC and the DA, and that's it, it exclude everybody else. Obviously, the ANC didn't want that. They wanted a broader kind of representation, and then they reached out to other parties. But the problem was we were all basically confronted by what was agreed already by those two parties. And then the government of national unity came into being. The biggest mistake, I think, is normally parties should come together. They should negotiate until they've agreed on a new policy platform amongst all the parties. It's not the policy platform of any specific party, and that becomes the platform of a new government. That basically never happened. So we went into this process, and we still hoped that it would be positive, etc., etc. But now, with hindsight, we can look back after more than a year, almost a year and a half, and ask ourselves, how successful was it? And technically, this government of national unity is supposed to last until the next election in 2029. If that's going to happen, that's a different question.
Yes. So I fully agree with you in terms of it appears that there was going to be a two-way coalition, which would have made sense on the numbers. Perhaps the ANC had in its guts saying that we can't really just go with one party. We must still remain as seen as a supreme party of the land. So we will invite everyone, as if it was like a choice of theirs to invite everyone. But when I was in government myself, I have noticed that the ministers, by all accounts, have very little veto power on policy within the department. They have no power to really thin out the officials within that department who have been there for 30 years and have 30 30 years of software that is, if I may say, overtly socialistic. And therefore, it's a little bit difficult as a minister who is not from the ANC to come in and to attempt to change a system that hasn't been changed in 30 years. So I think there has been quite a few gaps, notably the constitution, as you say, you need 14 days to elect a new president, but also the agreement at the time just really didn't go far enough. Was there a fear that the ANC would go straight to its offshoots, and that's why it felt a bit rushed at the beginning?
No, I don't. I don't think. Well, maybe the DA had that fear. I didn't feel that as a reality. I don't think the ANC would have gone close to the MK. It's like a feud between two brothers. The relationship between themselves and MK and the EFF are so bad. I quite often refer to the EFF as the ANC's youth league, currently dressed in red. So there's this family kind of connection. I wasn't worried that would be the case. I think the Democratic Alliance, the negotiations were rushed. I think vital mistakes were made. Let me give you just one example. How on earth can you agree that one party, which is not the majority, have an exclusive right with regard to our international relations? It's unacceptable. If a statement is now issued, South Africa says, no, South Africa does not say. It's not even the government of national unity that says, it's the ANC and DIRCO that says. So a number of those issues did arise in terms of a rushed process, I believe. And what secondly happened was this. The moment when the president was elected on the 14th of June, he started to operate not as a member, as far as I'm concerned, of a combined coalition government. He operates as the head of state in terms of the constitution. He appointed his executive, where the numbers changed and the DA and others became completely irrelevant because of the extension of the cabinet. And now they operate as an executive, and everybody is doing what they think they can do. But you're absolutely right. You've got a fixed memory in those departments. You've got policy statements that and part and parcel of what's happening there. And I don't think we are moving in the right direction, not at all.
And unfortunately, if this is what the elites want, and this is what is funded, and this is what makes sense for a certain group of people, this is what's going to happen. But what is the benefit for the Freedom Front Plus in continuing, or is there just no benefit to leaving?
Yes, it's a difficult question, but it's not that difficult. First of all, and let me just premise this. You remember the Democratic Alliance went into the ANC because prior to the 2024 election, the policy positions of most opposition parties were we will not cooperate with the ANC, we will not go into government with the ANC, etc. Then the result came, and the DA's argument was we have to prevent the doomsday coalition, which means from their perspective we have to keep MK and the EFF out, and they went into this coalition. Now, our vision was completely something else. We did not go in there to keep the ANC, the MK and the EFF out. My view at the time was that if you could be around the table where decisions are taken or are supposed to be taken that has a direct bearing on your constituency and the public in South Africa and the direction of the country, you should be around that table. That's the first point of departure. Secondly, we would never go into that kind of arrangement because of positions. That's absolutely the wrong way to do it. And a very large problem with the current one was that it ended up to a large extent about positions and cabinet positions and posts and whatever the case may be. We'll take the speaker, you can have the deputy speaker, etc., etc. And if you look back in our history, in 2016, we saw the first coalitions happen on local government level. And 99% of them failed. Why? Because it was all about positions. We take the mayor, you can become the speaker in the council. They all failed. If you put a coalition together around positions, it will not succeed. You have to do it in terms of a policy framework where you agree and you implement that kind of thing. So that's basically what happened in this instance to a very large extent. And I think that's why we have all kinds of problems at the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was a proponent of the DA and the ANC sort of coming together and rooting South Africa. I made comments and videos about this early in 2022, and I was rightly mocked. Well, not rightly, but mocked for saying it would never happen. But now it did happen, and I'm just very surprised at, if I may say, I'm not being bitter, but the lack of fortitude of a very senior partner in the GNU. Unwilling to bear its weight. I don't understand why that might be.
Well, let me put it this way. I think when the government of national unity kicked off, it started. I think there was a commitment at that stage, maybe from the ANC and President Ramaphosa as well, to make a success of this thing. And everybody was trying to make a success. But that I don't think that's the case anymore. And I've said, you remember that during the local government, after the local government elections of 2021, I was asked to chair a committee that tried to put coalitions together in many councils, many of the metros, etc. And I've always argued, I said, the larger party in any coalition must be the most humble and the most responsible, because we sometimes hear, but this is a small party. No, that's irrelevant. If you don't have a majority on your own, you're also a small party because you need somebody else. And you must be the most humble to reach out and accommodate the aspirations and the things from other parties so that you can maintain that kind of government. Now, originally, I think there was an attempt to really take this forward, but I'm convinced that's not the case. The two larger parties in the government at the moment, is my perception, are only trying to outwit each other, and they are both trying to perform in terms of portfolios to go to the public and say, look how well did we do in Home Affairs, how well we did in this. And then there's this thinking that at the next election, you'll get so overwhelming support that maybe you'll become the majority and you won't need a coalition again. And I think that's a very fruitless kind of approach, because we will have coalitions going forward in any case.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we can see from the Twitter accounts of the respective parties that the ministers, act in a vacuum for some reason and take credit for things that happened many years ago that are coming to fruition now. So based on your views, Doctor, are you going to... Life is short, especially political life is short in South Africa. The long-term propositions for the GNU and the Freedom Front Plus in particular within it,
Yes.
do you have any sense of what those look like?
Yes, I'm honest with you, and I'm honest with the viewers. At the moment, I'm under immense pressure from supporters and our constituency to withdraw from the government of national unity, and I know that. I've said all along, first of all, we are not there because of any positions. That's not why we are there. I think Dr. Groenewald is doing an excellent job at correctional services, but the reality is our constituency is mainly not in prison in any case. So we are not really serving our constituency in that sense. We do serve our constituency in terms of law and order and all that, and we welcome that. But we are not there because of positions. That's the first point. Secondly, I've said we would like to participate if we can be around the table and influence decisions. But if it becomes clear that no such table really exists, then you need to start asking yourself, why am I there? Are we there just to give numbers and to assist and create an impression? Then we have to ask, why are we still there? And we are evaluating that within the party, obviously throughout, and we'll see where this takes us. The other reality is also, I do not just want to storm out because of this or that or a specific emotional response at some stage, because also the reality is you can leave basically once. If you've left, you're not coming back. And then you must be sure why you are leaving and what you are doing. And interesting enough, if you go back to the policy framework, the fiscal framework with the budget, both ourselves and the DA voted against that framework. But despite that, the ANC could get over 50% with the support of other parties. So one mustn't think that you are making, if we don't make a difference and the DA doesn't make a difference in terms of the numbers, you must also calculate that reality when you take these decisions.
Indeed, which is why I did title this particular interview "The Adult in the GNU," because I think you are one of the few people that I think we met personally once, but the few people that I listen to and that I read about, where you do think about the second and third order effects of decisions, right? A lot of other decisions are only first order effects, short-term thinking. Freedom Front Plus and yourself in particular are markedly different from those things. So it's very nice to hear you explain your positioning in this particular regard. At the end of the day, we're just going to see how it pans out. There's no harm in it. There's very little harm outside of it. It's a bit of a stasis. And I think a lot of people might feel like that.
Yes. If I may say, thank you for your response in that sense. I've always said, when you go into these kind of things, whether it's negotiations and trying to put these coalitions together, or while you're in there, you have to take the emotion, if can possibly, out of that, because you have to be absolutely cold, rational in that instance, and try to see what you can achieve. Obviously, we all are there. I'm also in there because of our specific interest, our specific position, but you have to understand the bigger picture as well. And we will evaluate going forward and see what we can do, because in the end, I also have to serve my constituency. And the irony is the larger parties never understand that. You have in a normal, correctly functioning coalition, the larger party must give gains and successes to the other participants, that they also can demonstrate to their constituencies, this is to our benefit. That is why we are doing that. But if the larger party, like we've got in the Government of National Unity at the moment, is so ideologically driven that it's our way or nothing, and then what do you expect? You really think this is going to succeed in the long term? I don't think so.
No, I fully agree with you. We'll see how long it lasts. I give it till maybe 3 months before the next municipal elections. That's the rumors I hear. So we will see, or depending when the president decides to retire to Fresnay. Speaking of such things, Minir, outside of the GNU, there's a very strange thing happening in South African politics where the hard left seems to be completely disintegrating before our very eyes. And I can confirm that I mean the ANC itself, the Economic Freedom Fighters, and people say MK. I mean, they have a bit of both. They're sort of hardcore right wing in some areas, but also very left wing in other areas. But they're all offshoots essentially of the mothership, which is the ANC. And for some reason, these parties just cannot agree on anything to work together, to welcome the National Democratic Revolution, and they would rather just commit suicide simultaneously than actually make South Africa Venezuela, which we should be grateful for. But what does that mean for the future of politics in this country, where you do have a fair portion of the population who would gladly vote for these parties? According to some estimates, close to 65% of voters will vote for this block of parties. But if that block disappears within the next half a decade or a decade, do you have any intuition about what that means for South African politics? Does it enhance coalitions, or does it actually make it a lot more difficult to get a real government in place?
Let me say what I think, in the sense you're absolutely right. If you look at the hard left, they're in disarray, total disarray. And I think there are various reasons for that. Also, I think the influence internationally, what has happened in a certain extent to the left in terms of economic realities and those kind of things, does have an impact. I remember when the EFF, before the EFF came to Parliament, I think it was 2014 or something, one of their leaders said in an interview, "We are going to Parliament to bring the revolution to Parliament." Now, what does that mean? If it means you are disruptive, is that the revolution? Well, it wasn't very successful. You tried, but we are going on in any case. And if you look at the EFF, for example, it's the commander-in-chief, and it's commissar this and commissar that. And there was a time when the EFF people, every speech, they were referring to this or that revolutionary as an example of what they need to do. I am not all that concerned about, for example, the EFF or MK as a political force in South Africa, despite the indication that they may get some bigger support or not. I'm not that concerned. And the reason for that is the following. In my interaction with ordinary South Africans from all communities, black, white, colored, Indian, doesn't matter, Afrikaans, English, doesn't matter, I find that the vast majority of them, to a certain extent, to a large extent, want the same kind of thing. They want a stable country. They want law and order. They want to see that South Africa is successful. They want to see that the country thrives. They want the economy to grow. They want jobs for themselves. They want a future for their children. And I believe that what we need to do is to come with that kind of constructive message of what South Africa can be. And if one puts that out to the electorate, I think you can isolate the radical leaderships of these left-wing inclined entities, be that the EFF, be that MK, or certain factions within the ANC itself. And I think they will slowly but surely, as far as I'm concerned, wither away politically speaking. And I think that middle ground in terms of the South African public will remain a stable, huge entity in the middle. Now, the question is, how do we take that forward? I'm optimist always. I'm very positive, and in that regard, I really think that the best is yet to come in terms of South Africa, and that is where the international part comes in. Our country's got all the potential. We are absolutely the gateway to Africa if we can do the right policy things, but we are not doing them at the moment. And I think those are the kind of things that ordinary people want to have. People come to me everywhere, ordinary citizens, and they express these kind of ideas. And the other left-wing woke kind of things are really becoming irrelevant as far as I'm concerned.
I actually fully agree with you. I get into a lot of trouble because I do say that 8 out of 10 South Africans agree on what country we would agree on in terms of what it would look like. And most people are pragmatic and largely centrist. And that is borne out in the data as well. In a country with an unemployment rate of the youth of over 50, I think it's over 50%, depending on how you look at it, the fact that the EFF isn't at 40% is almost miraculous. In any other country in
Yes.
the world, you would have a hardcore communist, very much like the New York mayor at the moment. There's obviously chronic problems in New York now to have that person as the mayor, but the EFF never breached 10% ever.
No, they haven't.
And
No.
And yeah, and so just to continue very quickly, and the more ideological the ANC became, especially under Cyril Ramaphosa, who I think, in my opinion, is by far the most ideological president we have had since 1994, the support for the ANC has just collapsed entirely. I remember when he gleefully signed the NHI 3 weeks or whatever it was before the election. The estimates are that they lost 5% of the vote solely on that. So
Yes,
don't come here and say that there's a civil war brewing among South Africans. I just don't see the evidence for it.
No, it's not. My experience on a personal level, on a one-to-one level between South African citizens from different communities, are that relations are very good. People get along, people come along. There are no challenges in that regard. But you do have radical leaders who are walking and throwing matches in the dry grass, trying to put the country alight and thinking that out of the ashes, some wonderful new Venezuela will arise. It's not going to happen. It's definitely not going to happen. And I'm going to make, from my perspective, I'm working day and night to exactly prevent that. And I think we will succeed.
So if we are correct, Doctor, if we both say, okay, South Africans are centrist, pragmatic, they want a good country, for the most part, think that the Freedom Front Plus can bring us closer towards that sort of future that we want to see. How is the Freedom Front Plus ensuring that it is at the center of such rejuvenation in terms of your messaging, your policies, things like that? Have those things changed over the course of the last 3-4 years?
Yes.
Can you just give us a bit of insight into what the future of the Freedom Front Plus looks like based on this reality?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Let me just give you the quick historic background. Remember now, when the party was formed basically as an Afrikaner party that came out of the situation before the 1994 election, where the Conservative Party at that time said they're not going to participate. We said, you've got to continue, you've got to be part of the system. We founded a new party, which was found with people from different political parties. But we started off with specific emphasis on the Afrikaner itself. And we're not relinquishing that because that is part and parcel of who we are. But a couple of years ago, we changed our mission statement to say, but if we look at South Africa and you analyze South Africa, we are actually a country of minorities, or a nation of nations, in terms of our reality of how the country is composed. I once had an interview with an American journalist and asked me, in the first question was, how many people speak the language South African? And I said, there's no such language. That's why the Constitution, we've now got 12 official languages. That's the diversity and the reality of our country. So the party changed our mission statement and said, yes, we still recognize who we are, where we came from, and that is the base of, to a certain extent, our support base. But we also reach out to other minorities in South Africa, and we want to be the champion for the rights of different minorities, etc., etc. And just philosophically, I think I've always argued the recipe for nation building has been wrong since 1994, and that's why we're not succeeding. The recipe until now, from my perspective, was trying to surround ourselves with regard to stumbling from one sporting event to the next. It started in '95, the World Cup. And there's Mr. Mandela with the jersey, and everybody feels happy, and then we go home, and it lasts for about a month or no, and then we're back to where we were. And you can look at one event after the other. It was the Cricket World Cup. We fell out in the quarterfinals, not a success. It was a bid for the Olympics. Athens got it, and it continued. Even with the 2010 Soccer World Cup, even the thieves stopped stealing for about 2 months, and then the whole thing went wrong again. It will never succeed. What we do need is, it's no use to have this slogan or this motto for South Africa, unity and diversity, if we don't recognize the diversity. And what we are arguing is to say, recognize the diversity as a strength and accommodate that as a strength. And then that can be the building blocks of a strong entity, a strong unity that can take South Africa forward. And by doing that, we are trying to position the party in that sense in the center, and to try to accommodate people in that. And at the moment, with all due respect, the support I'm receiving comes across the board, because I think that kind of message resonates with ordinary South Africans out there.
But you do seem to be playing it. you are leveraging yourself against balkanization, though, if I may say. If I do remember, and tell me if I'm wrong, you did mention quite a few times, I think there was quite a strong campaign that the Western Cape should be independent or some sort of idea like that from the Freedom
Yeah,
Front Plus. Am I correct? Cape
yeah,
exits,
yeah,
something like that. I'm relying
absolutely.
on
No,
memory.
no, you're absolutely right. And it's a strange thing. It's a balance between the one to the other. What I mean with that is the following. We were very much involved in negotiating Section 235 in the Constitution that makes provision for self-determination within the constitutional framework for any community bound by common cultural and language heritage. So that's the reality. Obviously, the ANC has not operationalized that because they don't believe in that. We do believe in that because that is part and parcel of giving the recognition to the diversity in that sense. And it's a scale. If we succeed in making a success of South Africa, the need or the feeling or the support for balkanizing and breaking away will diminish. But if South
Correct.
Africa continues to collapse, the Titanic is sinking, then that will get stronger. And that's exactly what's happening to a certain extent. We don't know where it's going to end. But in the end, we are part and parcel of Africa. I always say if I go to Europe and I keep my mouth shut, people think I'm one of them. But I'm not. If I have to speak in racial terms, I'm a white African. And our future is here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have become a white African. I was born in France, as everyone knows now,
Yeah.
and I went back there in August for about 3 weeks. I went to go visit my family members, my mother. Lovely to go, but I was so happy to come back. My goodness, just that culture is just so suffocating. I cannot
Yeah.
imagine living
And
there.
the reality is Africa has become part and parcel of who we are. I always say it's nice to travel abroad, wherever you are. But when I get off the plane, be that in Johannesburg or Cape Town, you take a deep breath. I'm back, I'm home. And that is where we are going
Yeah,
to make a success.
yes, and until that feeling disappears, I'm going to be staying right here. Speaking of
So am
travels,
I.
Doctor, you have been
Yeah,
traveling to the United States, it seems rather frequently lately, and it appears to me that you seem to have quite a good relationship with the administration of Donald Trump. And I'm not going to say you have influence on what they are doing at the moment, but what is the chatter? What is the ideas coming out of the Trump administration on South Africa? And the question, well, the answer that I really would like to know is, why do they appear to be, for lack of a better word, picking on South Africa? I'm not blaming you for it. I'm not blaming Africa for it. I'm not blaming Solidarity, because I know that's a straw man created by the media in this country. But why
yeah,
does he have an itch with South Africa in general? Do you know?
yes. Yes, I think I do. I've been fortunate. I've been twice to the White House since I became leader in February, and I had good reaction and good interaction, and there will be some more later this year as well. The fact of the matter is that everything changed in that regard in February of this year when President Trump caught us all by surprise when he issued that executive order, uh, specifically reaching towards South Africa and also specifically reaching out to the Afrikaner, where the refugee status were offered to the Afrikaner. In
Mm,
my discussions in the White House, I've said, thank you very much for reaching out, but I'm going to do everything in my power that we never have to make use of becoming refugees in the United States. I'm an African, I'm not American. But the question, why are picking off for focus on South Africa? And there are various reasons for that, but I think the one specific thing that, well, first of all, the South African government for the last 30 years under the ANC with their international relations have been irritating the United States on many occasions. And there are a number of examples. If you look at the bill in front of Congress at the moment, to have a relook at our relationship between them, they list about 7-8 pages, paragraph after paragraph of one incident after the other, where the ANC as a government voted against what the United States perceives to be their national interest. And they tolerated that. But even under the previous administration, under Biden, they already started
mm,
to say, but we need to address this. I think the final straw was when the ANC took it upon themselves to say, we are going to take Israel to the International Court of Justice. And I think by crossing that Rubicon was the final straw for the United States. Because you can say whatever you like, there's a special relationship between the United States and the State of Israel. You are attempting there different things, and specifically because of the background. And the question was very simple. Israel is surrounded by all those Middle East Arab states. Not one of them thought it was a good idea to take them to the International Court of Justice for whatever reason, but South Africa did. And then the
mm.
question started to arise, what is the role of Iran in here? What is the role of the ANC's finances? So I think that was the determinant fact that started this process.
Okay, and I think it makes sense. And I think it makes sense to pick on South Africa. It's strategically important geographically. It controls the South Atlantic corridor. If you look at our voting record in the UN, it's abysmal for the most part. And I think
Yeah.
for a very long time, the Americans sort of just accepted that this plucky upstart African democracy would maybe it was just fake, like we will act like we hate America but we actually get along with them. And then funny enough, under the Joe Biden administration, I believe it was Senator Coons, I can't remember his name, but he was like,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous, why are we tolerating this from a
Correct.
minor country? We would prefer to have good relations and good trade and things like that, but
Yes.
we cannot tolerate this as a nation. So there's actually
Yes.
bipartisan support across the
Yes, it
Democrats
is.
and the Republicans against South
Correct.
Africa. It's not just a Trump thing.
No. No. And the interesting thing is this. The United States and the Trump administration will not interpret this as picking on South Africa. They really want to have a positive and a constructive relationship with South Africa. At some stage, some of the senior people there said, the problem with South Africa, well, meaning the ANC government at the time, was you want to be friends with all the enemies of the United States, but you want our investments and you want our trade, etc. So the Trump administration has got a completely different approach. They want to have specific agreements with individual countries. They are moving away from aid to serious trade. And they see South Africa as absolutely a kingpin in terms of opening up the rest of Africa, and they want to move with us in that regard. It seems that the ANC, and once again, our international relations means the ANC and DIRCO, they think that they can get away with agreement on more mutton and less poultry. That's not what the Trump administration is interested in. And that's why when we were there in June, they spelled out the preconditions for a reset of the relationship. And that still needs to be addressed. And we are busy in that process to try and assist. And I can't understand, why can't we do, for example, what India did? India is a very senior player in the BRICS agreement, but they look at India first. They've got a good agreement with the United States, etc. We should position ourselves in terms of what is in the interest of South Africa and try not to be so overtly in favor of all the rogue states out there.
Manir, it's almost like you read my tweets and watch my videos. Like you're just parroting what I'm saying. So I'm glad I'm joking.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah. That's wonderful.
But yes, I mean, India is the example to follow. They're nationalistic. What suits us? 40% off Russian oil and whatever American tech we can bring into our country. We can work. We can work with both of these things. It's not a juxtaposition. It's not a weird.
And the effect of that is, look at how the Indian economy is growing at the moment. They are becoming a serious player in the world.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, if we had a bit of competence, we could be like that. But yeah, a question though, if I may. I don't know if you're trying to with the Americans specifically, at what rate do we say, listen, just drop the hammer? Like, let's just break this facade of like this government of national unity. Just tell Trump, okay, just drop the sanctions. Like, let's just go for it. Let's just bite the bullet and let's try reset after that. And when is that stage happening, if ever?
Well, let me put it this way. There's a perception, and I think you mentioned that earlier by some of the media people in the mainstream media, that Solidarity or us went there to badmouth South Africa. Anyone that thinks that a country with the capability and whatever they've got in the United States need any of us to inform them of what's happening in South Africa is very naive. They know exactly what's happening in South Africa. As a matter of fact, they know better than we do. So they know exactly what's happening there. Secondly, all of us went there in our delegations and made the point to say, please don't punish the ordinary citizens of South Africa. It's to the detriment. For example, if you kick us out of AGOA, our farmers are going to suffer. Let's find a different way. The United States understands that. And that's why they look at a different way, and they are busy with legislation. If it will go through, I don't know. But they may target specific individuals in terms of personal sanctions, and that is a different route that they may take. They are observing and seeing, and they're still hoping for the best. They want to have a positive relationship with South Africa and the Government of National Unity. For example, the peace agreement that was now agreed in the Middle East, I immediately issued a statement and I said, this is the opportunity to normalize relations with Israel, reopen the embassy, send our ambassador, and go and represent our interest in that process. And the benefit of that would also be, it will send us a positive signal to the United States that we are looking at our position. What was the ANC's response? The president spoke I think 2 days ago in the Council of Provinces. We are continuing with the court case against Israel. Well, I can't help you. That is your kind of insight into how things should be.
Yes. No, at some stage, yeah. Anyway, I have my thoughts on this. Maybe they're not safe for the public at large like this. So, if I may, Doctor, those are the two main things I wanted to talk about. I'm happy to take questions from the audience at the moment. For those watching, please do drop questions in the chat, and we will gladly answer them. What is an important thing happening, or is going to happen, or something to think about that we haven't discussed as yet? What's on your mind at the moment, other than the things that we discussed recently?
Well, let me put it this way. We've got a little bit of a problem in the sense that our elections are stacked in the sense, or next year we're going into local government elections. So that has a negative impact on the Government of National Unity, because parties start to position themselves with the view of support from the electorate instead of working on cooperating with one another. But the outcome of that local government election is going to have a huge impact on the political system going forward as a precursor to taking us to 2029. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how that basically plays out, what's going to happen to the different political parties. Also, we must take note of the things happening within the ANC themselves. They've got their policy conference kind of thing looking at the end of the year. They've got the elective conference in 2027 to elect new leadership. And remember now, there's a precedent in the ANC. They've recalled the two previous presidents. They've recalled Mbeki before the end of his term. They've recalled Zuma. And I think Mr. Ramaphosa is also having an eye on that kind of situation. So there are a lot of developments in that instance of where we are going. There are some parties are consolidating, like we saw last week with the three parties coming together. But I think the most important thing is that the electorate should understand one person can make a difference. Your vote can make that difference, and people should get involved as far as that is concerned and make a difference. That's what I would like to see.
I mean, I agree with you, but then you invited Ronaldo Hout into the party. Now what? I'm joking.
No, I think that's very important. I think he's doing very well, and from my perspective, I've got an approach of live and let live, and I think Ronaldo is doing excellent work in terms of his constituency, in terms of his support base, in terms of his platforms, and I want to give him the leeway. Let's interact with the public like we are doing now.
Yes. No, I'm friends with Ronaldo, so that was definitely a joke. Please don't take it too seriously.
I know.
If I may, Doctor, I've got a few questions from the chat. I'll just read them out. We'll answer them, and then I'll move on to the next one, if I may. One awkward Leon is 17 years old and he's never voted before. So if you can just concisely give a brief summary of the values of the Freedom Front Plus, a word that I hate, I would rather change it to virtues of the Freedom Front Plus. Can you please explain to this potential new voter what you actually stand for?
Yes. Well, first of all, we stand for, I would say, if I have to position ourselves in terms of the political spectrum, I would say we are not right, we are not left, we are right of center on the spectrum in that instance. And all those values that are important in terms of common sense out there, patriotism, in terms of a free market economy, in terms of sound borders, in terms of merit, in terms of merit and appointments, we don't think BEE is the right answer at all. Just on that specific point, I had some clashes with the president about the economy, and I made a point to him in a question in Parliament to say, what new economic policies are being negotiated within the Government of National Unity, because the current ones are failing. We believe in a free market system. We believe we need to get the private sector involved. We need to privatize, get the economy to grow. Government can't create jobs. So in that instance, we are a very realistic party that believes in creating a future for young people who need also to have a beautiful future. And we can do that, but we need the youth to get involved.
So there's another question around, apologies. There's another question around, let's assume things go well. We have a stable coalition that agrees that a prosperous South Africa is important. The question revolves around how long does that actually take? What does progress look like under this new dispensation of coalition politics, assuming everything goes well in actually forming that particular government? What are timelines are we looking at, if any?
I believe we can start with the first things to turn South Africa around in a very short space of time. Um, if I read this morning in the Business Day, it seems that private enterprise at the moment have on their balance sheet cash of 2 trillion rand, which
I
they
saw that
don't
as well.
want to invest. Yes, they don't want to invest. They don't want to spend that because of policy uncertainty, because of no trust. I think if we get everybody on board, we can turn the economy around overnight. We can start to empower our municipalities in terms of giving excellent service delivery, zero tolerance for crime. We can really turn things overnight. And if you look at, for example, the United States, the largest economy in the world, wants to invest. They want to come with direct foreign investment. We have had those discussions. They want to assist with our energy needs. They want to assist with our harbors, with rail, etc., etc. It can really happen overnight.
I think so too. And I think leadership counts for everything. And I think if you look at the examples from around the world, especially in the last 5 years, El Salvador being an example, I think the Trump administration being another one, America
Yes,
today versus America a year ago is a completely different wild beast. And I say that in a
absolutely.
positive term, just completely different, solely through leadership.
That's leadership. It's all about leadership. And the second point is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's not that difficult to go around the world and say, where do we see the best international practice? Where do we see the best policies and things that were implemented that did bring that difference? And I think the South African public will absolutely absorb that and take that on board.
Correct. I fully agree with you. So, a commentator, John Jarvis, says he really likes your manifesto, but he suspects that it is limited to your voter base is limited to minorities. There is some overlap with the Patriotic Alliance. So, do you have a working relationship with the PA? Is there some sort of agreement between the two parties, perhaps in time to come? Just for the record, I know Gator McKenzie. I've interviewed him many times, and I've met him physically many times. Very special character, very charismatic. I quite like him. I understand people might not. So, what is your relationship with the PA? Do you see a relationship moving forward
Sure,
with them?
sure, sure. As we say in our manifesto, we do reach out to minorities, but the irony is minorities that take hands become a new majority. So you get empower minorities and let minorities empower themselves and get together, and that will become a majority, a central majority in South Africa, and that's what we are working on. With regard to the Patriotic Alliance, I've got a very good relationship with Mr. McKenzie. He's a very strong leader in his own sense. As a matter of fact, I identified him as a leader way back before other people thought it was a good idea. When I started with interacting with Mr. McKenzie and the Patriotic Alliance, some people said, no, you can never do that. The reality is, look at the by-election results, etc. The PA is making huge inroads. And it's going to become a huge problem specifically for the Democratic Alliance, I think. We don't have a specific arrangement or in that instance, but we were together in coalitions in Johannesburg. I think we were together in a coalition in Corne and others again. And come we're at the moment still in a coalition with them in Oudtshoorn and other places. Come the elections next year, I think the Patriotic Alliance will become a serious contender and a role player, and you need to deal with that.
And I think also, I think a coalition between Afrikaners, assuming they are your voters, and Coloureds, assuming they are the PA's voters, I think a coalition relationship between those two groups of people could be very, very important. One of the greatest crimes in our country was the disenfranchisement of Coloureds from voters' rolls and things like that, not to the detriment of others. I'm not saying one is worse than the other, but there needs to be, to me, some sort of reconciliation between these two of the oldest groups of people in South Africa, and maybe it could be done through politics.
Yes, absolutely. No, I must say, in that instance, I have a very good relationship with Mr. McKenzie, and I think you're right. There's a natural reaching out between those two communities. They put it that way, and the Patriotic Alliance has got Afrikaner support, and we've got some coloured support, but both our parties play a specific role. And I think in terms of policy, we find ourselves on very instances on the same platform with regard to the economy and many other things as well.
And just in terms of relationship, there's nothing to do with the chat, but just for my personal knowledge, it appears that you get along very well with parties in general. I see you are seen as someone with wisdom. People seem to like you a lot, especially other politicians in other parties. Do you have any relationship with the DA in a material way? I know there's been lots of. I remember back when we were in Joburg politics and things like that. It was very fractious. Uh, the DA was called arrogant many times over by various people. Is that still there, or is it a little bit more to and fro now?
I think we are making progress. I think the DA also realizes what coalition should be about. And I think we understand that most likely we will see each other next year after the election in coalitions. And I do have a good relationship with many of the DA people, and that's just the reality. The important thing is that if that's not the case, it will be a problem. The DA must also understand there's no such thing like we are the big party. If you don't get 50% on your own, you're just a bigger small party.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that is quite important. Meneer, I don't have anything really further on my mind at this particular moment, but it appears, but for all intents and purposes, you are the most optimistic person in South Africa at the moment. And I noticed throughout your interviews over the years that I've been watching you, that optimism has never waned. So do you feel even more optimistic now because we are dragging along the bottom? The only way is up.
Absolutely. As you correctly point out, I am an optimist. And let me just share this perhaps, and that's maybe part of the personality. I was brought up in a political home. My father was in politics, and we were three boys, and we had lots of pushing and shoving as three teenager boys. My father would go away, would come back from his political things, and he would ask my mother, how did the boys behave? And she would say, like teenagers, they were fighting. My father would have a court case, a very unfair court case. He would not ask what happened. He'll ask one question: who of you lost your temper first? And the one that lost his temper first, you are wrong. By doing that, he programmed us self-control. And in politics, it's absolutely essential. You cannot allow your emotions to get the best of you. And I think that has served me very well. And one tries to. The second thing that I think is in my favor, I've had the opportunity. I was in Parliament. I've always been in opposition, and that's the irony. I've always been in opposition, all my career, except now in the government of national unity. So I was there when Mr. P.W. Botha was still in charge. I saw Mr. de Klerk come and go, then Mr. Mandela, Mr. Mbeki, Mr. Motlanthe, Mr. Zuma, Mr. Ramaphosa. So it gave you a lot of experience in terms of how these things work. But I am an optimist, I'm positive, and I think the best is yet to come. And what motivates me is the reality. My contact with ordinary South Africans. South Africans are good people who want to have a secure future. They are not radicals. They are not on the edges. They are in the middle of the spectrum, and that's where we are positioning ourselves as well.
I can accept all of that. So there's one more question from the chat that might be a little bit uncomfortable. The future of the Freedom Front Plus in terms of leadership, succession, things like that. Normally, these sort of things are very fractious or can be very detrimental. It appears that the Freedom Front Plus has been very peacefully transitioning over power to new leadership for the past few decades. You've just come in. I'm not saying you need to go, but has the Freedom Front Plus made some plans on how that would proceed, assuming you would want to retire one day, Meneer?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm the fourth leader of the party. So in the last 30 years, we've had our normal elective conferences where we elect our leadership, etc. And every 3 years, the party reorganizes and everybody is re-elected, the leader, everybody else. So I'm realistic, and I would like to see the younger generation come through. And we've got some very excellent, brilliant young people in the party. And I would like to see some more join because they've got to take the baton forward. And I think that's a difference between us and maybe some other parties. If you build a political movement or a party around an individual personality, it will go nowhere, because if that person goes, that's the end of it. You've got to be about much more than that. So leadership can come and go, the ideas remain, and the party goes forward. I'm confident that when the time comes, I will gladly give the baton to the new generation and they will continue.
So my last question, and this has been not a criticism from my side, but I feel like the Freedom Front Plus is grossly underrepresented in the news. There's not a lot of campaigns. There's not a lot of media flair or statements or things like that. I'm not saying you need to become a cheap political trick party like other parties that we know about. Do you have things in mind to become a bit more at the forefront of the South African voter in terms of a possible alternative?
Absolutely. I'm very much committed to that. You remember there was a time when mainstream dominated all media. Those days are gone and will never come back. And with modern technology, in terms of social media, in terms of platforms, in terms of all these things, podcasts, everything, TikToks and Instagrams, everything, you can communicate directly to the public. And I'm absolutely committed. We have to do that. My mission is to get the message across and to communicate in the right way to the electorate out there. So we are busy at the process and in the process at the moment to reposition the party in that regard and just follow and watch the space. We are going to do our utmost to do exactly that. And on a lighter note, you mentioned Ronaldo. I think that's part of it, and we'll need some more of that.
Okay. No, I accept that. And I think it is wonderful. And I think young voters desperately need a home. I think for the most part, they don't vote at all. When I say young, under 35. So if we can make a cool party, like the Freedom Front Plus, even cooler to young voters, that would be great.
Could I mention one thing maybe in a light-hearted spirit? My eldest daughter got married about a month ago, the beginning of September. And now you'll find on social media, you'll find a nice dance video of myself and my daughter, which people don't expect me to do. It's a father-daughter, the bride dance. It starts off quite formally, and then we turn into rock and roll with Queen. But those are the kind of things that also makes a difference, where people see yourself not only as this distant politician out there, you're just an ordinary normal being as well, but you have to connect with your people. If you want to have success, you must represent what is in the hearts and the minds of the people, and specifically the youth.
I fully agree with you. Dr. Mulder, this has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege. Thank you so much for joining me. I was a bit surprised when you said yes, but I'm very grateful that you did come through, and I'm sure that the viewers are grateful as well. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you from my side, Roman. And maybe we'll have an opportunity. If there's anything in future that you want to discuss or need, give me a call. I'll respond immediately. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Doctor. Thank you. Thank you. And for those watching, thank you so much for watching. And please enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'll see you